Welcome back, everybody, to the Denver Broncos franchise. After 6 long, challenging seasons, the Denver Broncos finally have their first Super Bowl ring of this series. It was a very satisfying win, capping off our best year by far. We all knew how critical this season was because we have players getting older that would either regress or retire. We have key players on rookie contracts not making very much money. It was the year we had to win, and we pulled it off. But the series is not over there. We're continuing, of course. I've talked about this a long time. I want to do this series still for a while, as we have so many stories for so many players that have so much left to be told. So here is our offseason that I streamed on Saturday last weekend. There are some clips at the end that were not included, so there will be some new stuff here. But here is the latest offseason that we went through. Regression overall wasn't as bad as it could have been. However, DeAndre Hopkins has the second consecutive year of pretty steep regression, losing 38 total points, losing a lot of speed. I still think he'll be good, but no doubt we're going to see his play drop off at some point. Many of these veterans were on deals expiring after the season, and I didn't really plan on bringing many of them back. Darius Slay was the only player that officially retired here, although Von Miller was supposed to. There's something bugged with that scenario that never got fixed. But many key players around the league retired, a couple big ones for Kansas City with Tyron Smith and Travis Kelce. But let's get to our re-signing. The big question was, are we going to re-sign Taequan Layton? The inconsistency brought me away from the idea of a long-term contract at this point. I just could not figure out why the accuracy was still an issue and why certain games we just couldn't get it going. So I thought the franchise tag for Taequan Layton made the most sense, which would give us basically a year of test driving a team with a quarterback with a much higher cap number. So I began by letting a lot of veterans just walk with no offers given. Some of them I still wanted to have return potentially, but I wanted to focus on like 6 or 7 key players beginning with Taequan Layton. I was happy with a 1-year deal if it could land somewhere with the franchise tag around 27 to 30 million, but then I saw it would be $39 million, much higher than I expected, and that worried me when it comes to just assembling a team for this coming year with that high of a cap number. And I already said I didn't really want to go long term on a deal that would average around $26 million a season. So that created a bit of a dilemma. I wanted to compare that franchise tag to the other quarterbacks around the league, and most quarterbacks don't come anywhere close to that for an individual cap number for a season. Baker Mayfield's is pretty high. There were a couple quarterbacks whose salaries must have made the tag super expensive, but 39 to me was unexpected. And when I saw that, I did not think that would be a good idea for us, and instead, I chose to franchise tag Darnell Savage to keep him around for another season, while Jamari Akinjide now becomes a full-time linebacker, and this would buy us a year of having to figure out another starter at safety. For Deion Price, this entire time I've known he hasn't earned a big extension or anything, but you pay players for what they can do, not what they have done. And I still think that the best football for Deion Price is yet to come. So it was tough to think about doing a 3-year deal with him when we also have players who got some pretty lucky development. Tyrone Houston was named a Pro Bowler. It's kind of a bug in franchise, but he got 5 skill points out of it, and the ratings are certainly playable. I want to see what he can do. But ultimately, when I looked at Deion Price and the contract demand, and the chat certainly had some influence, I decided to offer the 3-year deal, knowing that the dead money, if it doesn't work out, would be manageable. He took it, and I have a plan for Deion Price that is beyond what he's done in the past, and we'll go through that later on. I decided to put Jason Murray on the trade block because the development hasn't worked out. The short accuracy just refuses to get better, and I can't trust him even as a backup quarterback if that's not a good rating. I need short accuracy to be reliable. I also wanted to put Bradley Chubb on the trade block because he's one player that I think we could afford to move on from, and his play has dropped off a bit. So, we go into free agency. Taequan Layton now, available for any team to sign. There were some really good players out there with Juju Smith-Schuster, Keenan Allen, and Terrell Corville, a very good receiver free agent class. And there were 10 teams interested in Layton. So if I wanted to negotiate now, the price is going up. Cam Newton. He was on the team last year, played really well for us. We never lost a game with him. He had one team interested. So for Taequan Layton, I wanted to see what a 3-year deal would look like. Those 5-year deals have around half of it guaranteed. It's a long commitment you can't get out of for a few years. But when you knock down the years, it really takes away from the points in those offers. So they really don't work until you jack up the price so much. And I didn't like that plan either. I had some interest in Terrell Corville with us moving on from Curtis Samuel. Corville is much younger. He has a bit different skill set, but with DeAndre Hopkins also getting older, I thought it was very important to find another young receiver. And while we have some with potential, that's just it. It's potential, not realized yet. So I wanted the more sure thing. At the same time, just experimenting here with contract offers for Taequan Layton, and most of them just weren't quite right. This one here ended up being $132 million, so that would end up being, on average, $26 million if you wanted to make that deal. And it's not unreasonable, it's just, what does the team look like when you commit so much more money to Taequan Layton? And what happens if he doesn't get better? Because his contract means about 1 or 2 more players we can't sign. So if he can't raise his play, does the team suffer as a result? I've seen so many instances in real life, guys like Jared Goff, who can get you there, and in this case, Layton did win us a Super Bowl, but a lot of times those big contracts end up holding the team back, and that's what I was being very careful about, and why I wanted that 1-year franchise tag test run, just not at $40 million. I'm thinking about other players who will get big deals. You can already, pretty much guarantee we're going to sign Boogie Turner to a mega deal, but who else? So it kind of was interesting to consider signing Cam Newton, trying to get him for a reasonable contract, and being more flexible elsewhere, but it means moving on from a quarterback that we spent so much time developing and who has been extremely good. He just wasn't for much of this past season. It's kind of unthinkable to move on from a quarterback after a Super Bowl run, but I know that it wasn't just like Layton carrying us there. He certainly was amazing in that first playoff game, but I'm considering those 4 losses down the stretch and how important the defense was to securing the final 2 playoff victories. Our defense never allowed more than 20 points in a game. So we do indeed offer to Cam Newton and move on from Taequan Layton, something I did not intend on doing when the stream began. But we also bring in Terrell Corville. So we basically swap out Samuel for Corville. We get younger there by a few years. Corville doesn't have the same game-breaking speed. I think his game is more similar to DeAndre Hopkins, a guy who can win in contested situations, very good off the line, doesn't have blazing speed, but doesn't need it either. And I'm really excited about Corville in this offense. So, we officially moved on from Taequan Layton. I had to take a look at the young quarterbacks in this upcoming class, and it's just not a great class. There was one quarterback who could be a day 1 starter, and only 2 that I thought had starting potential. Taking a look at the contracts, we see Layton actually goes to the Atlanta Falcons of all teams. They won a Super Bowl 2 years ago. So in one move, the last 2 quarterbacks to win Super Bowls in this series have been replaced. And the last Super Bowl winner replaces the previous winner. So Prescott Pemberton III is no longer a starting quarterback, but he's certainly starting caliber and still just 24 years old. So it's a shocking move by Atlanta. Immediately, I wanted to pull up some gameplay that we have against him, because one thing I was considering as well was Layton's throwing motion is really slow, and I don't change that stuff. I keep it part of the player's skill set and just part of their play. I wanted to see how Pemberton threw the football, and I really liked his delivery. The ball gets out quick, you can avoid a lot more sacks with a quick delivery, and that was one of Layton's biggest weaknesses. It was his throwing motion and his accuracy. That's really it. His arm strength got better over time. Pemberton's is even better. I'd love to have Pemberton on this team, but I didn't realize just how much they still valued him. It's weird because they replaced him, but at the same time, didn't really show any desire to trade him. Christian Baxter was being offered here in trades, as he's going to lose snaps to Akinjide. I considered giving them Jason Murray. They didn't have a lot of interest in that. Even Murray plus Baxter for Pemberton, it would take a lot more. So we halted trade negotiations, went to fifth-year options. This is Boogie Turner. The game, for some reason, saying he had almost no value. Okay. Defensive Player of the Year, tied the sack record, just an impeccable season. I think otherwise. We pick up the option, but decline the option for Donovan Jennings. And obviously that's just all based on his injury history and not being able to stay healthy for a 16-game season. This could likely be his last year with us in the series. Went through some scouting. I always look at some undrafted players, so I have options in those late rounds. Found some really interesting defensive players. I think there are more good defensive players for undrafteds than on offense. So you can always find a good defensive lineman or a safety late. Teams began giving us offers for Bradley Chubb, and these were certainly reasonable. But ultimately I decided to not trade Chubb here because I felt like we still needed an edge rusher, and trading him would just make the need even more glaring, and I didn't want to do that. So here's a look at the roster at this point. Cam Newton is back. Josh Oliver is back. Overall, I like this team, but Cam Newton is not a long-term option at this stage at quarterback. Defensively, we basically returned everybody, and I felt like this defense is only getting better. There are still some young players on the rise. Darius Slay is gone, and that's the main loss. So on we go to the NFL draft. The Tennessee Titans picking number 1 overall. And they go with the Heisman Trophy winning linebacker Von Barr from UCF. Next up, the Atlanta Falcons. From a Super Bowl champion to the second worst team in the league in one season. They go tight end Ethan Cornelius. Lonnie Stammer goes to the Green Bay Packers. And then Carolina goes Chase Mullen at center. We quickly found out this was perhaps the weakest draft class I've ever seen in this game. And obviously, I don't have the blackjack draft classes any longer. I have no way of accessing the EA share to download those files. So we go with the EA generated classes, and they're not great, but this is exceptionally bad. It's definitely the worst I've seen in this entire game. There were 64 overalls going in the first round, left and right. So it's not the most interesting as far as adding talent to our universe here. There were some interesting players, and I'll be editing in some players from the last Kalispell season, and I'll show those in a future episode. But anyway, the first round kept on going, and in the back of my head, I knew Nate Sheffield was still available, and he'd be tough to pass on in the first round. I couldn't believe that he wasn't going. I felt like there were still a few teams that could use a new quarterback. And sure enough, we go to 32, and he is still there. And the chat really wanted Nate Sheffield right here. 8 throw power, 21 years old, great short accuracy, great under pressure. Seems like an easy choice, right? Well, I wanted to think about Prescott Pemberton III one more time. I didn't see any other player here that garnered this first round pick over Sheffield, but I felt like Pemberton was the right quarterback to target. So now, with a first round pick offered, I wanted to see if we could finally get a deal done. A first for Pemberton and a third. It's not even in the same ballpark to them. How about a first and Baxter? Close, but no. A first and Baxter for Pemberton and a 4? That's not going to get it done. A trade there would just be so much. And ultimately I decided we would go with Nate Sheffield instead. We go with a young quarterback with a ton of potential. And Nate Sheffield is another new quarterback for the Denver Broncos. I can't believe we're doing this again, but here is the new quarterback from USF. He does have hidden development. That's, of course, very big. 13th in true talent. And his ratings are not bad at all. There was one rating that made me a little less excited, and that's the 87 throw power. But that can and should get better. The accuracies, though, 80, 80, 85. You can't ask for anything better than that on day one. So I'm very excited about that. We found in the draft later that Jason Slaughter is going to be edited to be on the Titans. Montrell Bonds is going to be on the Patriots. Key players from the Kalispell Dynasty season that would go along with this timeline. In the second round, I went to look at edge rusher Jazir Deacon. And we bring in another hidden dev 71 overall player, 14th in true talent. So a good start to this draft. The only issue with Deacon is that his strength is so low, he's going to be a liability most likely in the running game. So he's not necessarily a great all-around player, but if he can be a good pass rusher, then he will fill his role perfectly. On to our next pick here early in the 4th round, and we decide to go with tackle Cameron Vaughn. Just simply too good to pass on right here, and excellent depth with some really, really promising ratings. I'll have to keep him in mind when it's time for us to consider an extension for Simon Robbins. We trade out of our next pick. I wanted to acquire a future draft pick and then have the 5th round, where I was really liking Kobe Gold. The chat wanted Nelson Johnson, who was the better player available, but I felt like he was so similar to Cam Smithson, I'd rather have Kobe Gold. So I took him here, 21-year-old run stopper from Eastern Washington with 83 speed. Low coverage, but I see a skill set here that you can develop into a backup or future starter. And then Nelson Johnson was still available with our next pick, and I took him there. So we get both. Johnson compares very much to Cam Smithson. He does have 82 finesse, 82 strength. Maybe we can move him around the defensive line a little bit, depending on our depth and what I think is necessary. Gotta get him some snaps somewhere. Avery Zellner is the pick next up, and he's a safety at 65 overall. What I like about him is that he's 6'4" with 88 speed, so that's tremendous range. Hard to throw it over the top of safeties with that combination. We then go with Bradley Evans late, trying to acquire a tight end with some athleticism, low catching. That's just kind of how it goes here in Madden 20. And then we go with Jimmy Clark. I wanted to take a shot here on a quarterback who had some size and speed, even if maybe quarterback wasn't going to be his true position. And it turned out that Clark's throwing ratings were just not very good. I moved him to tight end, fullback, some other spots, and the skill set would have been too low. So he's a very, very long shot to make the roster or practice squad. And we close the draft. Mr. Irrelevant is Jason King's newest backup, fullback Malcolm Kowalski, who has 79 speed, 77 strength, and could still make the roster considering a fullback is now a pretty key part of the offense. Overall, though, not impressed by this draft class. Hopefully the next one ends up being a lot more impressive. Our division rivals didn't do great. The Chiefs especially had a bad draft. The Chargers did a good job with their first 2 picks. They get Chris Wynn in the first round, a linebacker who has hidden dev, 85 speed, 77 awareness. He's good in coverage, so I imagine they'll be able to find success with him. And with their second pick, they went defensive back Lincoln Bramble, also a hidden development. So maybe we'll see a bounce back year from the Chargers with the help of a couple of rookies. The Raiders, meanwhile, they didn't do much either. Jack Kershaw was their first round pick, and I'm not sure they could have done a whole lot better given how weak this class was. Von Bohr was number 1 though. Really complete skill set, 80 speed, 78 awareness, excellent against the run. Needs some development to get the coverage up, but should have a very bright future with Tennessee. And then we go to the preseason where I signed Nicholas Baldwin. I wanted him on a multi-year deal, but it would have cost much more than $2 million here. So we closed out the stream by just seeing how Sheffield threw the football. I was a little nervous about this with his 87 throw power. Would his arm look weak? What would happen? And overall, the release is very good. The ball comes out quick, and the 87 throw power didn't appear to be a major problem in any way. And I expect that throw power to get better as Layton's did. So I think that with Sheffield, we have a good quarterback to start developing now behind Cam Newton. But here's what I recorded after the stream ended. I finally traded Jason Murray. We sent him to the New York Giants in exchange for a 3rd round pick. And Murray is going to have the chance to be their new starting quarterback over Teddy Bridgewater. That should be really interesting. Murray's skill set, I would compare him to Oliver Raymond because he's a strong arm quarterback who wants to push the ball downfield, but is very inconsistent underneath. That short accuracy was just too low for me to consider developing him further. And now, he's a starter for New York, and we could match up with him in Week 10. We made some signings, including Javi Cortez-Phillips, the wide receiver who was drafted just 2 years ago. He was cut after 1 year with the Ravens, then went to the Packers, was pretty good a year ago, but became available again. So he'll have a chance to make the bottom of the depth charts, and I just wanted him for some competition. And apparently he made the Pro Bowl a season ago. We'll see how he plays in the preseason at least. I also signed Brooks Berry, who's basically in that Ronell Poindexter role from last season. He didn't play very much, he was there for depth and wasn't really needed. We'll see if we need Berry at all. As far as edge rush depth, I think that we have a chance to play Nelson Johnson there and Toa Tuilau-Pupu a little bit. We also signed some intriguing undrafted free agents, including cornerback Corin Hubbard. Max Kepler just scored. I'm commentating this alongside the Twins game. Go Twins. Ashton Hitchcock, wide receiver from Princeton, 6'6", 220 pounds. 90 speed, some low ratings for sure, but I'm just intrigued when a player has a couple strengths that you can start to work with. How about 68 overall safety Dalvin Beal from Indiana, 6'3", I like safeties with good size, 86 speed, 69 zone coverage, better run defender right now, definitely a box safety. And then my favorite undrafted free agent of all, Danny Heath, 5'9", 205. 90 speed, good short route runner. He has a running back-like skill set at wide receiver. He will definitely have a shot of making this roster. I'm going to list him at running back here in the preseason so I can get him carries if I want and also play him at receiver. You can't play receivers at running back, but you can play running backs at receiver. So that's why Price is also listed there. And here's a look at the depth charts. Marion Peppers is going to be named the new starter, and I now want him to out-touch Donovan Jennings and for Jennings to be a lot more situational and not just start and get carries until his pitch count runs out. Dion Price is going to play the role of Anthony Hampton. He's going to return kicks, and he's going to get snaps at wide receiver. He will be the ultimate role player for us, and he'll get chances that I don't think he's seen in the past. We'll see if he cashes in on them and if this was the right move to bring him back. He has 3 kick return and punt return touchdowns in his career. I know he has value there, but we need to see the big plays return on offense. It's been 3 years. Jason King. My plan is to try him out at tight end a little bit. Not our number 1 tight end, but perhaps our number 2. That's a way to get him even more snaps and to utilize his ability in the running game. We're also going to have a wide receiver competition Vashawn Wright, and Tyrone Houston, who can become the number 3 receiver? Or is there somebody else like Javi Cortez Phillips? Big competition there, big snaps to somebody. Defensively, Eric Palmer is now a starter. Eric McKinney is actually going to play on the outside in our base defense and then go out to slot, while JT Granger will get some snaps at corner. Granger is still going to be a focus player, as I'm trying to make up for the fact that he only has normal dev and I have to fix a few of his low ratings. I'm also wanting to try out DeAndre Hopkins in the slot. I don't think he's going to be ineffective on the outside, but maybe he's going to be most effective in the slot, while we have some more speedy receivers that can stretch the defense. Not sure if that's going to be something we do beyond preseason, but we're going to try it out. And here's a look at our salaries right now. If we had signed Taequan Layton to the $39 million franchise tag, we could have basically fielded the exact same roster without Cam, of course, and maybe a few of the late additions to the roster like Brooks Berry. Overall, we could have pulled it off, and I'm sure many still think that we should have kept him around. It was a difficult decision, but for now we have Cam Newton, a player that we know well, and a quarterback behind him in Nate Sheffield that I think has a lot of potential. So we'll see how this goes. Could have been a huge mistake, but only time will tell as we get into year 7 of the Denver Broncos franchise soon, everybody. Preseason is coming your way next time. I am not sure if I'll stream any games, but I'm looking to get that up as fast as I can, and we'll see what this team looks like going into their title defense season. Please leave your feedback down below. Let me know what you thought of the offseason. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Have a great day.